79,000 households were owed help from local authorities to address homelessness. Now, currently, homelessness in England is at the highest since 2018.
London, the iconic capital of the UK, stands tall as the world's second largest financial hub, trailing only behind New York City. Its skyline, dotted with modern skyscrapers and bustling streets, encapsulates Britain's storied history of success. Boasting the sixth largest GDP in the world, the UK shines with an impressive 76% employment rate and a rising happiness index. By many measures, the UK has gotten most things relatively right, except one: housing its citizens. Rapidly and alarmingly, homelessness is unfolding as the UK's silent epidemic. So, what's wrong with the UK's housing market, and why is homelessness becoming such a big problem? This is the dark story of homelessness in the UK. The rising number of Britons without food or shelter paints a concerning picture of poverty in the UK. It's no longer a distant issue, but a real crisis pushing many households to the brink. In 2015, a study by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation found that over 1.25 million people, including 312,000 children, lived in poverty. It's alarming that almost 2% of the population in one of the world's leading economies is unable to afford basic human needs like food and shelter. And, since then, an increasing number of UK families have faced housing instability, often moving homes, leading to a disrupted, almost nomadic existence with far-reaching repercussions on health, safety, and education. One 10-year-old boy, expressing his fears to the Children's Society, said, "I'm worried about moving, because if you can't find a house, you might have to go to the homeless place, and then those houses are really little." Even when families secure rental homes, they often face subpar conditions. According to Shelter, a major UK housing charity, 40% of rented homes don't meet basic living standards. Residents frequently complain about pest infestations, dampness, and safety hazards. And alarming statistics from the English Housing Survey reveal that over 400,000 employed households reside in privately rented properties plagued with Category 1 problems. These severe issues range from health-threatening dampness and mold to hazardous electrical installations and even the dangerous presence of chemicals like carbon monoxide, lead, and asbestos. And the issue of private rentals in the UK has reached alarming levels. Landlords, while showing properties to prospective tenants, frequently downplay or conceal existing defects, with some even covering up or painting over faults when showing new tenants around. A survey by the Children's Society found that 1 in 3 respondents discovered issues after moving in that had not been disclosed to them. Worse, 1 in 10 renters feared eviction if they voiced their concerns. Recent statistics shed light on the troubling homeless population. Over 4,000 individuals in England, 1,700 in Scotland, and 240 in Wales are homeless. In cities like Leicester, for instance, homeless people gather along the canal. Some find refuge in old warehouses, while others pitch a tent or construct makeshift wooden shelters in a shantytown. But what led to this surge in homelessness? During the 1980s, the Conservative government introduced the right to buy policy, allowing tenants to purchase their council homes at reduced prices. This resulted in the largest capital shift to the working class in UK history.
Channeling his inner Margaret Thatcher, David Cameron announced last year the government was going to extend Right to Buy to housing association tenants. Remember, Right to Buy is a scheme where the government offers big discounts to council tenants to buy their homes. Now housing association tenants will enjoy the same opportunity. The first sales are expected imminently.
In the policy's first 30 years, over 2 million council homes were sold. However, councils were prohibited from building new homes to meet the growing need for houses and replace the sold homes. As a result, many of those who had bought council houses, especially the financially better off ones, sold their properties to private landlords. This led to a drastic shift in the demographics of council and affordable housing tenants. Today, in London, over 30% of former council properties are now in the private rental market. And what's surprising is that this social cleansing often goes unnoticed, thanks to shows like Channel 4's documentary series Benefit Street, which have actually helped entrench stereotypes portraying social housing and benefit claimants as perpetuating a culture of poverty.
Unemployed. You see this street here? James Turner Street was one of the best streets. Unemployed. No, one of the worst.
James Turner Street in Birmingham is not your average street. There are 99 houses. 13 nationalities.
Yeah,
And most of the residents
penny for the poor
are claiming benefits.
However, the common myth of generations of jobless families is almost entirely unfounded. In 2012, in a study by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, they undertook intensive fieldwork in deprived neighbourhoods of Glasgow and Middlesbrough and dispelled a commonly held belief. They couldn't find a single family across 3 generations that had never been employed. Their research affirmed that the majority of families aspired to work rather than rely on benefits, and young adults in these families sought to avoid unemployment.
I mean, if you ask me, could I survive on benefits alone? The answer is quite simply no, I can't. I mean, I've basically worked out that if I survived on benefits alone, with me and my 3 children, we'd only eat for 3 days. And for 4 days, that's it, we'd starve.
Similarly, in February 2017, Oxford Economics analysed official records and discovered that over 1 million homes across the UK were vacant, mainly because most of these were second homes or properties left unoccupied. Home ownership appeared to be on the decline, with the number of home owners, whether outright or on a mortgage, being at its lowest since 1986. Recent statistics from the Department for Communities and Local Government highlight the changing landscape of UK housing. Over the past 16 years, the number of working households opting for private rentals nearly doubled, from 2.5 to 4.8 million. Furthermore, families with children choosing the private rental route has surged threefold, reaching 1.5 million. This rise has cascading effects on the UK, impacting broader societal aspects such as poverty, education, employment, and community cohesion. But it doesn't end there, as financial strain on renters is evident, as over 70% of private renters in the poorest fifth of households spend at least a third of their income on housing. This compares to under 50% in the social rented sector and 28% among homeowners. The stark difference lies in the stability of the housing arrangements. In the private rented sector, as per the English Housing Survey from the Department for Communities and Local Government, 40% of private tenancies last 6 months or even less. In terms of tenure, 30% of private sector tenants have lived in their current homes for no more than a year, and for social housing tenants, that number drops below 10%. Private tenants often face precarious housing conditions, with 3 main types of fixed-term contracts: 12 months, 6 months, and rolling 4-week contracts. After the fixed term, landlords can evict tenants without specific cause. This instability in the private rental sector exacerbates poverty and limits opportunities for vulnerable households. Between 2015 and 2016, government data indicates that at least 58,000 households were recognized as homeless, a rise of nearly 50% over the previous 5 years. The most frequent causes were the termination of a short-term lease or rent arrears. In the third quarter of 2016, 74,630 households, including over 117,000 children, were living in temporary accommodation, ranging from women's refuges and bed and breakfasts to housing associations or council sites. A December 2016 report by the Institute for Public Policy Research found that out of the 6,680 families placed in emergency short-term bed and breakfast accommodation, most had been there for at least 12 months. and one family had been in temporary housing for 36 years.
How are you coping mentally in a small room with a 10-year-old daughter?
I'm not. Take it hour by hour. It's very hard. As you can see, we have dampness and mould right above the cupboards. It comes right down into my actual cupboards, so I can no longer store food in my cupboards. I had to throw all my food out. If I was locked up in prison, I would live more comfortably than here.
Victoria's daughter is one of 200 children here.
Honestly, I feel depressed, I feel sad. This place isn't a place to live in. There's no playgrounds around here. Some people, they will come out and shout if we're too loud.
Shelter, a housing charity, estimated that by the end of 2016, around 254,000 people were homeless, based on figures related to rough sleepers, temporary accommodations, hostels, and those waiting to be housed. And the scary part is that Shelter described this as a conservative estimate, meaning the number could be much higher. Many people in the UK who receive housing benefits in the private rental sector are employed, and the government expects them to increase their income by working more hours or finding better paying jobs to cover rent. However, this is often not feasible due to limited job opportunities and rising cost of living.
The cost of living in the UK is rising, and it's changing people's lives.
We either have to eat and be cold, or be warm and starve. That's the way it is.
For parents, the high cost of childcare can make it unaffordable to work more hours. Pensioners, or those on employment and support allowance, may struggle to find extra money beyond their budget for necessities like food and clothing. Shelter's research in September 2016 revealed that nearly half of working families had cut back on essential food and clothing to afford rent. About 1 in 5 reduced spending on children's clothing, and approximately 1 in 10 had skipped meals. The introduction of universal credit in 2013 further complicated matters. It consolidates various benefits into a single monthly payment, requiring claimants to manage rent, food, bills, clothing, and transportation expenses from the lump sum. The result is that this system has essentially broken the link between housing benefits and the rent that people actually pay. In June 2016, a study by the National Federation of Arm's Length Management Organisations, NFA, and the Association of Retained Council Housing revealed that 79% of universal credit recipients in council housing had rent arrears. This is compared to just 31% of other tenants. By August, universal credit claims reached over 324,000, with an increase of 17,000 each month. By October, data from housing association Housemark showed that universal credit recipients had average rent arrears of £618 per property. In contrast, non-universal credit renters owed an average of £131. Given that the average social rent is about £96 per week, this means the debt from universal credit equals roughly 6 to 7 weeks' rent. The financial strain has forced many Britons to relocate. Between 2010 and 2016, a third of housing benefit recipients renting privately in London moved out of their town. Professor Nick Bailey from the University of Glasgow highlighted a concerning trend. Over the past 12 years, many lower-income individuals in British cities have been relocating from city centres to outer towns. This shift is due to a decrease in social housing and reduced welfare benefits. Bailey emphasises the gravity of this migration, stating, "If an area that large was cleared, it would cause political chaos. The current changes are so scattered that they're almost unnoticed." So, what do you think? Will the UK finally put its house in order? Or are we going to see more people homeless?